The Jamie Dyer Show.
Welcome to the podcast. Jeremy Nunes, welcome. What's your passion?
Well, I think you got it right out of the gate. Stand-up comedy, my friend.
Oh, now that is such a tricky thing to do. How on earth did you get into that?
Well, it was something I'd always wanted to do. It was just a matter of finally having the nerve to get in front of people and say, everybody else be quiet. I'm going to be funny now. And having the people pay attention and listen to you. So that's how it all started. My family actually owns, I don't know if the same term in the UK, a trailer park. Do you have trailer parks in the UK?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. You think so? So in the UK, I'm sorry, in the US, my family owns a trailer park. And it's kind of customary that in any family business, the father passes the business on to his son. So he wanted me to take over the trailer park empire. And instead, I said, I would rather make tens of dollars doing stand-up comedy. And here I am.
Yeah, and you've just released, in the last year or so, a stand-up special on Amazon Prime that people can go and look at. And your comedy, you're what they call a clean comedian. How difficult is it to be clean?
Well, for a lot of people, it's quite difficult. For me, not so much, because it's generally how I talk in the first place. Unless my little kids are getting out of line, then I might not be so clean, and I regret it later.
Yeah, your family feature a lot in your stand-up, and I always wonder this with stand-ups: what do your family think of you including some things that are happening in their lives in your stand-up in front of sometimes hundreds, if not thousands, of people?
Well, my wife has generally been pretty cool about it. If there's anything that might be questionable, she's okay with. I usually run it past her first. And then if she says no, of course, I'll still do it. But my dad has always been great about it. My two little ones, they're still too little to recognize what's happening yet. But I'm sure, especially when they're teenagers, they're going to have a big problem with it.
Well, I mean, at the moment, you're fine. You can say whatever, but you do have the problem when you're in the media, whatever that may be, that you are putting it down onto tape or video so they can watch it later.
Well, that's true. It is forever. So I'd never really thought of it that way. So like you mentioned, the comedy special on Amazon, it is, I guess it's going to be there forever. So who knows? My kid may get picked on someday because I did a stand-up special.
Well, fingers crossed that it stays there, because people should go and look at it. I watched it recently and I was very impressed. You weren't a comedian that I was particularly familiar with, but your style of delivery is quite staggered at times. You leave gaps. You know the power of the pause.
Well, thank you. I came up through the Second City, if you're familiar with that, sort of a big kind of a comedy mecca in Chicago. With a lot of prominent comedians have made their way through, and I guess I kind of developed that style there. I call it front porch comedy, where it's kind of the more paused and relaxed type of conversation you would have on your front porch. And so I've kind of since translated that to the stage, and here we are. I guess it's working.
Yeah. How big a crowds are you currently playing to?
Currently zero because of the corona. Now, pre-corona, I was at the point where I was kind of working my way into smaller theaters that seat 200, 300 people. We're really getting some momentum. Everything was going great. Every single week I was lined up and doing shows and finally making money, and all the dues I had paid were finally paying off. And then somebody coughed.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we've been now. We're kind of stuck.
But 200 to 300 people, if not more, that's a big front porch.
Yeah, you probably get the cops called on you, I think.
Yeah, quite possibly. Is it true? I know that a lot of comedians, they talk about their real life. It's observational. That's the kind of humor that you do. Is it true that you were really a mayor?
It is. I got elected. True story. Got elected um, on a Tuesday. The same week, that Saturday, I was to marry my wife. So she knew going into this that on our wedding day, I was either going to be really excited or really mad. And I told her, don't worry, I'll be mad regardless.
Goodness, I mean, that was it was something that surprised me, actually, and I wasn't sure whether it was, something you might have invented or whether it was completely true, and it sounds like it is.
Yeah, 100% true. Actually, I had enough success that we had an opening in our United States Congress, similar to your parliament, and the political bigwig powers that be were vetting me, as they say, to take that seat. And eventually, I think a little more money was snuck under the table to somebody else. That's how it works, So, but yeah, so I finished out my mayoral term, and then from there just focused on comedy. But as you mentioned, yeah, so many people don't actually believe it until they hear the stories, and then some of the stories are so outrageous they even say, "Oh, there's no way, there's no way." Like, yeah, that happened.
Absolutely, completely true. And you mentioned COVID, and it's a massive thing at the moment. It's affecting people all over the world in whatever arts industry you happen to be in. What have you been doing during this time when you're not able to perform in front of people?
Well, since the Amazon Prime special has come out, I've been working really hard with all this downtime to develop a new show altogether. So I've been doing a lot of writing because when things get back to normal, my hope is to have a brand new hour-long show that no one has seen before, because as I am hoping that the Amazon special will draw new fans and new supporters to me. And I don't want those same people then come see me to pay their own money to see me, and then I'm doing the same exact jokes they just saw on TV. So I've been working hard to write. I'm working on a book. I've got a publisher for that, and so we're moving things along. We're doing a little bit of online shows, which are a little unusual. It seems a little dirty almost to say, yeah, if people come watch me in their private room, they'll have a good time.
And mostly all off the back of this Amazon special that you've got out there. How hard was it to get it up on the platform?
So how it works, if you're not a gigantic name, is you essentially have to fund the special yourself. So I had to pay, to get the production crew there, to get the editors, camera people, everybody. Luckily, the venue let me have the venue for free. But so you have to pay everything up front, all the costs, and hope that someone will purchase the rights to it. So, my wife was a little nervous about that. She's like, well, if nobody buys it, we're just going to have a really expensive home movie. I was like, yeah, that's what our wedding video is. So we pitched it, and then, yeah, I've got, had Amazon Prime picked it up, and they were nice enough. So the show is clean enough that it can even be on a Christian platform. So there's another platform. If you don't want to throw your money toward Amazon, a Christian platform called christiancinema.com also has the special on there.
Yeah, I was seeing I mean, it might have something to do with the fact also it appears from the credits that you actually filmed it in a church.
Right. And it's interesting you didn't recognize that it really looks like a theater. Would you agree?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So we did some location scouting, and then that church, I had actually performed in that church previously, maybe 2 years prior. So they knew who I was. We did not do or say anything that would, bring shame to the church. And as you mentioned, it's a clean show, so they didn't have anything to worry about as far as me dropping any 4-letter words or anything like that. And they were very gracious. They had an army of volunteers help with so much, and it was fantastic. They even helped. The background is super cool looking. I don't know if you paid much attention to that, but they even put that up specifically for me. And you can't do stuff like this without good people helping you along the way.
Well, it looks fantastic. And one thing I notice, I mean, the thing is, whenever you see a comedy show, you always look around and you look at the background, and then you pretty much zone out. You're watching the comedian. But if they've got a prop on the stage, you're always there wondering, when is that prop going to come into it? And your prop is the acoustic guitar that is by the side there. And I kept wondering, when is this going to come into play? And my question to you is, how often do you play the guitar in your act? And was there more than what we saw?
There was not more than what you saw.
Right.
I didn't cut out any songs or anything. What's funny about the guitar is most of the time I'm kind of gauging by the audience's reactions whether or not to use the guitar in the first place. So it's very common for that guitar to sit there the entire show and me not even touch it. And people just sit there like, what's it going to do? And then eventually, thank you. Good night, everybody. And people are like, what? He didn't touch a guitar. But I'm with you. I do think it kind of helps with the intrigue that the audience is constantly staying focused because they're like, when's that thing gonna get used?
Yeah, and it's minimal. It's only like a few minutes, isn't it? And then you're sort of telling jokes with it.
Right. I'm trying to recall. I think I did the small town campaign ad. Mm-hmm. And then do you have in the UK I did the song about the small town gangsters? Do you have a small town gangsters there in the UK?
Possibly.
So that is the guys that pretend they're gangsters, but are not. They're like just the small town kids who for some reason think they're bad street kids from the inner city. And so I have a song about that too, as you mentioned. That's actually one of my most downloaded tracks on iTunes. Also, people love that song.
Oh, it is. So you've got albums on iTunes as well, have you?
Yeah. So I've got. Let's see. So the audio of this special is my 5th album. Mm-hmm. So I think there's 2 or 3 still on iTunes. I think my earliest 1 or 2 have since been pulled.
Ah, I see. So people can go and check that out on iTunes and possibly other places to get audio as well. Now, one thing I noticed, and I said to you before this chat, that I wouldn't give you any questions because I know that you're quite good at improvisation. And I noticed in the special, certainly in some other bits and pieces I've seen, you do communicate with the audience quite a lot.
Well, I prefer to. I think audiences like that too. I call it walking the high wire. Because generally when a comedian's performing, they have a rough idea of what they're going to talk about. But I think for me, it brings something different. And I think for the audience, similar to the prop, you're watching to see what happens next when you just throw the script out the window and talk to the guy in the first row whose shirt slipped up over his belly and his guts hanging out, and you could kind of point it out and see what happens. I think people love that. So I try to have as much fun as I can.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you should give an example there based on appearance, because one of your things is the fact that you're about 6'6" tall.
Right. So as I mentioned in the show, everybody always asks me if I play basketball, and I always say, no, nobody asks a short guy like, hey, are you a jockey? or nobody asks like an overweight guy, hey, is there a buffet around here?
Yeah, it is true, isn't it? Because, the basketball thing, certainly.
Oh, all the time, especially from a small town. If you're over 6 feet tall, it's like automatic. You have to be on the basketball team. We have a theory around here. We've got a town where all the high school boys are at least 6'6". We think they're putting something in the water.
Yeah, well, I know that you mentioned in the show, I won't give away too much of the material, don't worry, but that your one of your children said that they weren't going to eat too much because they wanted to have just about enough because you were freak tall.
Yeah, I said, don't you want to be big and tall like Daddy? He said, well, I want to be tall, but Dad, you're freak tall, so I ate just the right amount. He's always got something to say. I don't recall if I said this in the in the special or not, but one of the stories I like to tell is I was in the bathroom putting lotion on my face, and he's kind of, as little kids do, he's kind of watching, and he's like, "Why do you do that?" I said, "Well, I guess it helps my face look nice." And he goes, "I don't think it's working."
Yeah, that's very funny. Kids do say the funniest things. Do you ever sit there with a pen and paper and just write all this stuff down?
I try to write down, especially the stuff when he's talking back to me. So, and get ready, it'll be in your house before you know it, Jamie. I'm telling you. But you know, he's one day he's like, we're gonna put you in your room. You'll be in timeout. And he's like, "Well, I'll push you in the closet and lock you in there." I was like, "No, you won't." He's like, "Yeah, you'll be locked in there, and there's a mousetrap in there, and you'll snap your toe on it, and then you'll be crying." And they just get on and on and on. It's never ending. I'm telling you.
I know. I think it's that sense that kids have where they're not afraid of anything, so they just say whatever, regardless of the consequences. I mean, you mentioned obviously you're in the US, I'm in the UK. Have you ever been over here to do any shows?
No. Right when the special came out, I got a couple nibbles. As far I should say, when word of the special happened, I was getting some nibbles. And then, of course, here comes COVID again. So I got my passport. I didn't have one before. Got the passport ready to roll. And then, sure enough, somebody coughed, and and we're stuck.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you do get to come over here, because I think that many people would appreciate your clean brand of humor, because there's a lot of talk, certainly, about comedians who will use expletives and stuff. But I find that the clean comedy can be a little bit cleverer in some ways.
Yeah, I do think that it's more difficult to do. That doesn't mean I don't laugh at dirtier comedians. I do find a lot of them funny also. But this is my style, and as you mentioned, there is a whole segment of people who really appreciate the cleaner side of things, and to be in the minority as the only person really in the it seems like the whole general section of the country I'm in to do clean comedy has really paid off for me.
Well, I do wish you the best of luck with it, because that special, I will probably watch it again at some point, and I wish you the best of luck with writing that new show. I mean, how far do you think you are into writing that show?
I would estimate I've got somewhere around 40 or 45 minutes right now. And with no normalcy on the horizon, I do feel like I'll probably have that knocked out before long. And then it's just a matter of kind of honing and tweaking and sort of finalizing everything. So I'll definitely be ready when the time comes.
Well, do you find that maybe you'll write something down and then it will date really quickly?
Yes. So, and this is something I picked up at the Second City. So your intention then is to write something that won't be dated. So if you find something specific about, for coronavirus, let's say, chances are that coronavirus is not going to be a topic a year from now. You know what I mean? So what you find funny about it, you need to kind of tweak that and make it its own, make it, instead of about corona, make it about the flu, for example, because the flu is going to be around, forever. But so that's sort of the thing. You try to write things that aren't going to just be outdated in time,
and a little bit more universal as well. And one of the last questions here, I wanted to ask you, how do you manage to remember all of that material? What's your process for remembering everything?
That was one of the biggest concerns I had, because I hear it's different in the UK, but in the US, generally, the worst comedian on the show goes first. and then it works its way to the best comedian last. Is it the opposite in the UK? I hear that.
I don't know. I haven't been to a comedy club recently, so I wouldn't be able to say.
But so generally in the US, so kind of the newest, most inexperienced comedian is first, and he does about 5 minutes, maybe 10. And then they have the middle act, who's kind of a guy he's been around a little bit, but he's not yet the true pro. And that guy does about 30. And then is what they call the headliner. And then that guy does about 45 minutes to an hour. So as you kind of build your way up, you're still building your material as you go. So that's kind of how it's all up in my brain. But it still impresses my wife because she says I forget everything I tell her.
Yeah, well, priorities, I suppose.
Sure. I said, honey, you haven't paid me to do anything.
In terms of that, I mean, you don't have to tell me any particular payment details, but how long was it until you received payment? In what ballpark? Because you started about 17 years ago. How long was it before you started to see some return?
It took about a year before I started making the really small money, where they give you maybe $20 for the show, and then maybe $50, and then maybe $100. So I still would say I was probably even in the $100 a show range, probably 5 years in. It's just a long process. Now, do we have time? Can I tell a story?
You can tell a story.
Okay. So this is the first show I ever got paid at. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, when you first start, you really only have about 5 minutes. And most people know if a comedian recognizes the topic's not working or the people don't like the topic, he just switches the topic. When you're brand new, you've got nothing to switch to. You have your 5 minutes and that's it. And so I'm performing at this place. It's a pizza restaurant / bar, tavern, pub, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And they have chicken wire in front of the stage, like the old Blues Brothers movie. They got chicken wire. Okay. And so at the time, there was a fast food restaurant. I want to say it was KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, who was selling half-gallon jugs of fountain soda. So I had this story. I don't even remember what joke I was trying to tell, but I said something like, I don't even think truckers drink that much. And this guy stands up in the back, goes, "Don't be making fun of the truckers." And I was like, oh, well, I'm not. I'm just trying to illustrate. I don't even think truckers drink that much. And he stands up again. "I said, don't make fun of truckers." So his buddy kind of grabs him and settles him down. He's like, "We're sorry. He just got off the road." And I was like, don't worry. I don't even think truckers would do it. And he's like, "That's it." And he takes a beer bottle and wings it at me. Well, of course, it hits the chicken wire, falls down. Well, now all these there's like an audience of truckers are all mad and they're throwing stuff at me and they're like, "Get him." So now, meanwhile, I had prearranged this long time ago. I had prearranged with my friend who was there with me. If things went crazy, he had my car keys. So he was to pull the car around the back so we could escape because we thought that's how comedy worked. Okay. So I run through the back. There was a side door next to the stage. So I run through the back, which happens I have to run through the kitchen. As I run through the kitchen, I fall and hit this big pot of pizza sauce. So now I have red fluid all over me. I get to the back door. The manager of the pub is yelling, "Stop, wait, stop." And I'm like, "No way." I keep running. I get to the alley. I look, I see my friend coming in my car. He sees me with the red sauce all over. He thinks it's blood. And he's like, "They stabbed you. They stabbed you." So I jump in the car and the manager's like, wait, I still got to pay your $10. So he gives me the $10 and I look back and here is this giant mob of truckers running down the alley after us. I call it the Boston Fleet Party. And so they all run after us. We peel off, and I never looked back. Got paid ever since.
Oh goodness! I mean, you've certainly come a long way since then. When was the last time you made a joke about truckers?
That night.
It's all trial and error, isn't it? When you're trying to think up material.
Sure. Well, and then what I was trying to illustrate that night was I'm not making fun of truckers. I'm just trying to say truckers don't like to stop, so they drink large amounts of fluid, so they have big jugs of fluid because they don't want to stop. Truckers feed the country. I understand, and it didn't matter. They weren't having it.
No. Well, audiences are a little bit more receptive these days. And if people want to check out Jeremy's special, they can check out Who's With Me on Amazon. It's available on Prime. And if you're in certain parts of the world, I believe you can also get a DVD version if you'd like to keep it forever. But Jeremy, if people wanted to find out more about you, where would they need to go?
They just go to my website, which is my name, jeremynunes.com, Nunes. And then you can find me Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. I got on Twitter early enough that my Twitter is my name, at Jeremy Nunes. And also, as you mentioned, the Amazon special there, at this rate, last I looked, there are 10 reviews, 9 5 stars, and 1 4 star. So there is one Simon Cowell out there. When everybody else said, it's great, I love it, fantastic. One guy was like, good, not great. so yeah, Jamie, if you have not reviewed it, please take a moment to do that.
Oh, I will do as well. And if anybody else has seen it, I would say, yeah, go and review it. And I would like to say thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Week Before.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
The Jamie Dyer Show.